Alrighty, here we go. Hey everyone, I'm Amy Morgan, and welcome to the first episode of our Trade Nerd Legends, a series dedicated to the unsung heroes of global trade. Most people have no idea what trade professionals actually do, and yet they're the reason the system works at all. They keep our shipments moving, our companies compliant, and the world connected, often without recognition, even though their work touches nearly everything we buy, use, or wear every day. That is what we mean by trade nerd. Trade nerds don't just do the job, they live it. They don't just understand the rules, they understand the reasons behind them. They believe trade at its best connects people and ideas in ways that move the world forward. And that belief is what keeps them showing up through every disruption, every audit, and every regulatory curveball. Trade work has always been essential, but today, as it becomes more strategic, more cross-functional, and more visible than ever, it's time to honor the OGs, the people who've been doing this work long before it made headlines. This series tells their stories to celebrate where we've been and inspire the next generation of trade nerd. Today, I'm thrilled, honored, to kick off this series with someone who embodies everything Trade Nerd Legends is all about. Our guest is a trade icon and someone I deeply admire. You may know Ana Hinojosa from her extraordinary career with U.S. Customs and Border Protection, where she started in Laredo, Texas in 1987 before going on to lead some of the most consequential trade enforcement work in the country. As Executive Director of Trade Policy and Programs at CBP, she oversaw threat assessments, special investigations, and enforcement programs that tackled everything from forced labor to tariff evasion. Ana's impact did not go unnoticed. She's received the Service to America Medal, the Department of Homeland Security Exceptional Service Gold Medal, a People's Choice Award, and even earned a congressional record honoring her career. And Ana didn't stop there. She took her experience global, serving as Director of Compliance and Facilitation at the WCO, and in 2022, she brought all that experience to the private sector and launched her own trade consultancy, continuing to impact trade work in a whole new way. And yet, Ana is so much more than her trade career. She grew up in South Texas. She's flipped burgers at McDonald's, sold cologne at Dillard's, substitute taught in a special needs classroom, and has even been a head lifeguard despite having zero lifeguard experience. Fearless, adaptable, and full of heart, Ana is a reminder what it means to lead with conviction and compassion, to walk the talk and show up fully every single day. Ana, thank you for your service, and thank you for being here. I'm so honored to have you as our very first Trade Nerd Legend.
Amy, wow. I mean, you totally outdid yourself. I'm very humbled to be the first guest on this series. I think, you know, even as we meet with some of the other trade nerds around the country, I think we see that, you know, people are tired, but people are excited. There's really a huge opportunity because with every crisis, we'll call it that, there is an opportunity to learn and to grow from it.
Well, you set us up perfectly, right? And the first thing we started to touch on it, actually. It's kind of a known thing in our field that most of us did not set out to build a career in trade, right? It usually just sort of finds us. How did this career find you? What's your trade nerd origin story?
I went to a commuter school. In that commuter school, I started a criminal justice program because I thought that was my stepping stone to get to law school. Soon after I got there, I had heard about this internship program that U.S. Customs was having with the students, and that you could work full time for a period of time and then study and then work and study. And I thought that would be perfect for me because I could get a government job part-time and then hopefully at the end, you know, move on to law school or whatever. When I was interviewed, it was the first time they were going to hire 2 interns for an import specialist intern position. They had not done that as part of this program. They had just done the officer positions, which is what I was looking to get, was an officer position, but they offered me an import specialist position because of my math skills. So I said, well, I just want the job and I want the experience, and so I'll take it. Even though I grew up on the border, I never knew what actually happened on the commercial side of importing and exporting. It was so foreign to me, but I feel so lucky that when I started there, there hadn't been a lot of new people there. So there was a lot of very seasoned CBP employees there, or customs employees there. And so they really put me through the paces. They made me sit and figure out how to input a bond. And so I had to work on bond processing. They made me figure out, back then, again, we were in a less automated state. We had to manually put in the 3461s. We had to collect money manually, all of these different things. So I got to work all of these different stations in the entry department before I got a chance to actually work at the import specialist department, which was absolutely amazing to really understand what it takes and the reasoning behind that. And the people that were there were so wonderful. They loved all the questions that I asked. They wanted to tell me more, and then they would not just tell me the answer, but they would tell me where in the regulations it was covered. And so I would go back and read the regulations to understand, well, how do these regs read to what it looks like and what we're doing in the day to day? And so it was fascinating to me, and I loved it. And I felt like, I don't know, like I was solving mysteries every day. The importers back then, I'm really going to date myself, and some people who are in my same age range will like walk down memory lane with me. So many of the documents required carbon paper, and they had to fix the documents. They couldn't just handwrite the changes. They had to retype the documents. So a lot of the runners for the brokers who would come to deliver documents that need to be signed by the import specialist, or just different forms, they would carry with them a portable dot matrix typewriter with correctable ink, so that they could try to fix the documents. And it was really a special time where you really had to talk to people. You really had to explain to them the rules, and in order to do the bureaucratic work that was required to be done in order to facilitate the movement of this cargo. So it was a crazy time, but really a special time.
What a neat time almost at the start of when globalization was taking off, to have been a part of that moment. And was there a time in there, or maybe it came later for you, where you realized that this was more than just a job, but something special?
I think when I graduated from college, from the university, when I got my degree, I had the opportunity to do something else, right? Or accept the permanent job that I was being offered. And it was never a question for me. It was just like, I belong here. I really, truly belong here. I had found my people, I'd found my niche. I really understood the connection, even early on, of concepts that normal people don't talk about, the GDP, the calculation of GDP, the value of what it takes to keep our supermarkets, products on our supermarkets safe, how goods crossing our borders impact our economy. All of those different things were something that was a quick connection for me. And I really felt like the job wasn't just processing paperwork. The job was bigger than that.
I can absolutely relate to that. I want to keep this spotlight on you and keep the conversation going by resurrecting a story you shared with me a few weeks ago. You told me a story that has really stuck with me. It was about Malawi. It was about tobacco. It was about a moment in your career when your trade work got deeply personal. Can you take us back there? Can you retell that story for others and tell us what was going on at the time?
I'll take you back to January of 2020, reminding everybody that in late February 2020, we all faced the pandemic, right? So in January of 2020, I had finished, in December, I had finished my assignment at the World Customs Organization. I'd been living in Belgium with my family, and we returned back to the U.S. To start back with Customs and Border Protection in D.C. There were a number of withhold release orders that were issued before I got there, and one of them was on the entire country of Malawi, on any tobacco that was grown and harvested in Malawi could not come into the U.S. because it was under a withhold release order, suspected of being produced with forced labor. So I'm a whole 3.5 weeks in, 4 weeks into the role, and we took a trip to Malawi to explain the forced labor enforcement, to meet with the ambassador, to see what was happening on the ground, because there was a lot of rhetoric going around that the government just didn't understand what was happening, and therefore we had made a mistake somehow on the withhold release order. It's very, very poor country. Most of the industry is kind of in the center, northern part of the country, and very little happens in other parts of the country. There's problems with literacy. Poverty is very pervasive throughout the country. And so what normally happens in the tobacco farms is you have large plantation owners who then bring on tenant farmers. They give them a plot of land. They lease them a plot of land with a little hut, and they'll give them one big bag of rice or one big bag of grain, and then the seeds and whatever they need to grow what they're going to grow for the year. But these farms, these larger farms, understood that this tobacco, because what's unique about the Malawi tobacco is that it has a very low nicotine level. And it's great because for the large tobacco companies, they are getting better yields on their premium tobacco, and that premium tobacco, though, has very high nicotine rates. So to meet regulatory requirements with regards to the tolerance levels of nicotine, you have to kind of mix this low nicotine tobacco with the high nicotine tobacco to get the benefits of the good taste or whatever of the higher end tobacco, but still bring it within tolerance levels. Water down the nicotine levels with the Malawi tobacco, which is what many tobacco companies look for that tobacco for. So it took months of really working with some of these large companies that have contracts with all of the large name tobacco companies to get them to provide the evidence about what their controls are, what they're doing to ensure that the situation that they have on their farms wasn't having conditions of forced labor. And we finally were able to exempt a couple of these companies from the withhold release order. And having been down there, I had very direct communication with the farm representatives. And so we were about to exempt the first big company from the withhold release order, and they had been, devastated by not being able to sell the tobacco. So we were about to issue the exemption the following day, and so I called the gentleman in Malawi the day before just to kind of give him a heads up. Hey, by the way, tomorrow this will be announced, and starting tomorrow you'll be able to start shipping. And so I called him, and he answered the phone, and he was driving. He said, "I'm sorry, I had to pull over to the side of the road." And then tell me again. And so then I had to tell him again, and then he started crying. And then he said to me, "You have no idea what this means to our people." And so it was so moving to really understand that what we do is not just a bureaucratic transaction, that there is that connection, that somebody's job, somebody's livelihood, somebody's you know, it's not the big business, but he was very concerned about the families that were there working and were going to lose their ability to have that livelihood.
I mean, you've told me this story before, but it gave me chills all over again because it really captures what this series is all about, right? That human impact, the weight of the work that we do, the meaning behind some of the regulations. So thank you for sharing that so openly. Uh, I think your story is a reminder why this work is so personal to so many of us. And I think a lot of people listening will see their own purpose reflected in your words and in your story. So thank you for sharing that. What an amazing experience to have been a part of. Um, Now, every trade nerd has that one thing. Maybe it was a product or a tariff code, a regulation, or even a moment that has stayed with them, etched on their brain, good or bad. It maybe pops into your head at random, or maybe it haunts your dreams. What's yours?
Well, I don't know if I mentioned to you that when I first started in 1987 at U.S. Customs, we had the old computers. So we had cathode ray tubes on the desks, and they were all either amber screens or, either the letters were either orange or green, but there weren't any graphics or anything like that. And then later on, I was assigned to a team where I was responsible for electronics, which included computers. And I would say 8471 is my tariff heading of choice, because it's amazing to see how it has just transformed. Like you can see how, as a society, globally, things have changed dramatically just in what is included in that heading. It's just crazy. It's crazy.
Well, what's funny about 8471 is that the language itself hasn't changed that much. There things have been added to it, but it doesn't say computer or laptop. Automatic data processing machine. That's a good one. That's a good one. Um, what excites you about the future of global trade work? And what do you think the next generation of trade nerd needs to be ready for it?
Well, I think, maybe connected even to the idea of 8471. Just seeing how much in 30 whatever years, what falls under 8471 has evolved and moved the needle on technology and accessibility in our world. If we talk about briefly the changes in doing away with de minimis for Chinese products, I mean, the volume of de minimis shipments that were coming in is really huge. And so even just being able to keep up with that volume has required quite a bit of computing. What trade will need for the future, having much more transparency and visibility into supply chains, you're really going to need the use of more technology support. So I think geographically around the world, we're going to see some shifting. Some of that shifting will be on a positive note, meaning that there'll be new trade agreements, and so people will legitimately move manufacturing to areas that are more favorable for them as part of tariff engineering. But there's also going to be some not so legitimate movement of goods into areas to try to take advantage fraudulently of better tariff situations. That's going to require a lot of computing work as well, a lot of visibility and traceability. And so I think technology is what I would say. Get comfortable with it, make it part of your life, because that's going to be the wave of the future.
That's exciting, right? Because it's actually can be a good thing when you're trying to attract new young people into this space that has traditionally not been so tech forward. And it's a neat way to attract new talent and fresh perspectives into this business. So I agree with you. It is really exciting, and technology. Lastly, Anna, my very last question is, in your own words, what makes somebody a true trade nerd?
I think we start realizing we became a trade nerd when we go to the grocery store and we are looking at labels for things that we would do in our job to make sure goods are
Right.
compliant. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's not the fat content. It's we're looking at is it properly labeled? Is it admissible? Is it a product that should be here? You know, when we start doing that and it really infiltrates our personal life, now we know we're a nerd.
Anna, thank you. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your service and for setting the tone for what Trade Nerd Legends is all about. And it's been a real pleasure. I always enjoy our conversations. I learned so much from you every day. And to everybody watching, if this conversation moved you, please continue to follow along. This is just the beginning. We've got more legends to celebrate. And please share this with the trade nerds in your life. And we will see you next time.
Thank you, Amy.